Hello, I am back, and today we are gonna be talking about Dire Bound by Sable Sorensen. Although you might recognize this book by its traditional cover. This is the special edition by FairyLoot, and if you stick till the end of this video, I will be showing you this edition in detail. I finished this book yesterday, so my emotions are still a little bit raw. But we have a lot to unpack. There's a lot that I want to talk about. This video will be my form of therapy to overcome the emotions that I felt last night when I finished it. But for those of you who haven't read it, don't worry. There will be spoilers, but not in the beginning of the video. I will let you know when I start speaking with spoilers, so you are safe for a while. Let's start from the beginning. How did I find this book? Well, people in the internet said, you should read this book to cure your Onyx Storm hangover. And the moment I heard that, I added this book immediately to my TBR because it's been a year, it's been over a year, and I am still not over my Onyx Storm hangover. So I saved this book for a moment of need because, above all, I am a mood reader, so I cannot push myself to read something that I don't feel at the moment. And I thought there will be a time when I will be better prepared to go back into a Fourth Wing-like setting with dire wolves, and I'm gonna really enjoy it, and there's gonna be a Shaden-like character, and perhaps I'm more ready later on. And that moment has come. And on a random Friday last year, I got an email from FairyLoot saying that they had available stock for the special edition of Dire Bound. And I thought, perfect, this is my opportunity. I didn't have the hard copy, so I was like, I'm gonna get it. It's gonna take a few months to arrive, but it's fine. I'm still not in a rush to read this. So I ordered it last year around October, November, if I recall correctly, and it just arrived last month. And even though I'm still not over Onyx Storm, let that be known, I thought this is the time. Now I'm gonna read this. And just for your information, in case you are not aware, Sable Sorensen is the pen name of the two authors of this book, which are Elisa and Annie. I'm just mentioning it because I might be referring to the authors in this book and it might be a bit confusing. So now you know, if you didn't. But essentially, the reason why many people were referring to this book as the Onyx Storm Hangover Cure is because this book contains very similar elements to Fourth Wing or the Empyrean Saga. And I'm gonna talk about this in more detail now. And actually, this book is officially advertised as a book for readers who love Fourth Wing and the Hunger Games, so you get a sense of what's in here. So let's talk about that first, because when I first picked up this book, I had no idea what this story would be about. The only thing that I gathered from other readers was that it was something like Fourth Wing, but with dire wolves. So essentially we have recruits in a military academy setting who are bonded to dire wolves instead of dragons, and they share this mental bond with these creatures. And that there is also a very Shaden-like main character, which, I mean, I'm gonna read it because Shaden is the best MMC that I have ever read. Nothing compares. So going into this book, I was expecting similar vibes to Fourth Wing. Essentially, not a copy, but something super similar, but with direwolves. But I was quite surprised because the setting itself was different. I was transported into a completely different place. There is the bonding with mystical creatures, the Shaden-like personality, the military academy setting, an ongoing war with some ancient beings that are sort of like vampires that do blood magic. But other than that, I have to say, I was transported to a different place. So that's where the similarities to Fourth Wing end. And you might think, oh, well, that's a lot of similarities. I don't think so. They were just like small details in the grand scheme of things. However, I have to say that there were a lot of things that reminded me more too powerless, to be honest. And not just because of these Hunger Games, deadly trials element that this book indeed has, but also because there were a lot of things that reminded me of that book. And of course, I have heard of everything that has happened with Powerless and its resemblance to the Red Queen. I haven't read the Red Queen yet, so I cannot say anything regarding that book yet, even though I know it was written before. Yes, I'm planning to read it. But I'm gonna be comparing it to Powerless just for the sake of this video. But essentially, the female main character, Meryn, she reminded me a lot of Peyton because they are both women who are growing up in a society where there's poverty and then there's the elite. And there's quite a clear contrast between them. In this book, the elite would be the bonded, which are the warriors that are bonded to the dire wolves. And of course, then there's a king, and there's the prince, and there's the nobility as well. But both Peyton and Meryn have very similar upbringing and personalities. They are both extremely resourceful. They have this fighting spirit and this kind of feisty personality. And they both find themselves, for different reasons, in this situation in which they have to survive a certain set of trials. They are both commoners, and they are in a position of a disadvantage compared to the other people that they are competing against. Also, the trial elements of this book reminded me more of Powerless because they are set in this arena with nobility or elites watching them as they compete against each other till death, and they can be quite brutal. And there's also this trial up a mountain, which also happens in Powerless. It's different, again, but there were also a lot of similarities in that regard. Or at least things that I picked up that I was like, this reminds me of this and this and that. It's completely fine. I didn't feel, as I said, that this book was a copy of anything. I just thought it was unique. It transported me into a different place, unlike Powerless and Ilia, unlike Navarre in Fourth Wing, so completely different. Let's talk about the plot now. So I have a lot to say, but I think I will start with the plot as a whole, and then we will talk about the romance. And when we talk about the romance, I think I have to start talking with spoilers because I just cannot. Okay, so let's start with the story first, before I get carried away. So after I read this book, I went on to read the different reviews, and I found that a lot of people were saying that a lot of the plot twists or a lot of the plot points were predictable. And I do agree to some extent, yes. There are a lot of things that you will predict in this book, most likely. And there are not like a lot of shocking twists, let's say. It doesn't end in a cliffhanger that you are like, oh my God, what is the next book gonna be about? And like, oh my God, this huge discovery. No, I think that you kind of sense the discoveries and the big plot twists that happen in this book. I think you sense them. If not exactly what happens, you have some sort of idea. However, I was not mad about it because it was all well executed. So you were not reading it like, oh, this is so obvious. Yes, this is gonna happen. No, you were reading it more like, I have my suspicions. Let's keep reading. It happened. It was not obvious in an annoying way. The way it was written, it had interesting enough clues and added information to the twist, to the point that for you it felt more of an accomplishment when the twist actually happened and you predicted it. So I'm not mad about it. I like the story, I like how it developed, and I like the direction it's going towards. And I want to see what will happen with everything that we discovered in this book on the next book. Shall we talk about the romance now? I don't think I'm ready. I mean, as I said, I finished this book last night, so my emotions are still very fresh, very raw. And I have had some time to process it, but when I start to think about it, I still feel the emotions I felt when I finished it. And I have to say that when I finished the book, I didn't know, like I usually have like a clear reaction, you know, like I loved it, I'm like neutral, this was good, this was bad, whatever. In this book, I just stared blankly at my wall, thinking, I don't know how to feel. I was feeling, I couldn't even find the word. Hurt, maybe, but not exactly hurt. Yes, maybe hurt. I'm not sure. Still, I don't know. So when I finish a book, I typically go to Goodreads, rate it. Sometimes I write a review about it. And yesterday I was like, no, I cannot go to Goodreads. I need to think about it. And I was pacing around my house, just thinking about what had happened and how I was feeling. Again, there's not like a shocking plot twist. You kind of predict more or less what's gonna happen. And I had a sense of where things were going. But it hurt me. Still, I knew that something was coming and it hurt me. And I just didn't know how to put it into words. And the thing I did was I started to write in a blank page all my feelings. And then I ended up posting this 900, 1,000 word review on Goodreads. I don't think anyone will ever read it. I'm gonna be anyway saying the same things essentially in this video, but it was a therapeutic process for me so that I could process all these emotions that I was feeling and put them into words and understand what I was feeling, because my head was spinning and I didn't know like how I was feeling. If you haven't read it, the only thing I'm gonna say before I start speaking with plenty of spoilers is go into this book with no expectations about the romance, because you cannot categorize it. You cannot add a trope to this book. So just go in completely blind and with no expectations, because if you think traditionally with these tropes in mind, that this is a slow burn, an enemies to lovers, a love triangle, whatever. It's just not it. It's just, I don't know how to describe it to you. And there's a bit of truth in all of these things, but not quite. So just let yourself be drawn into this romance. And hopefully you don't end up like me by the end. If you do, let me know in the comments. And because I was not prepared to experience such a roller coaster of emotions in that regard, again, not because of the plot, but because of the romance, I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was really nice. I really loved it, but I was left so deeply unsettled and confused and hurt and so many other things that I don't want to say so I don't spoil you, that I had to give it 4 stars. Okay, this is your warning. Now I have to speak freely. So if you haven't read this book yet, but you still want to see what this special edition looks like from the inside, all the beautiful artwork, the end papers, the reversible dust jacket, head to this point in the video. I'm gonna be showing it to you and you won't be spoiled. And save the video and come back once you have read this book, because maybe we share the same opinion or maybe we don't, but we can have a discussion. Now, if you are still here, that means that you have read this book, hopefully. So now let's talk about the romance. So going into this book, as I said, I knew that there was gonna be a Shaden-like personality, and I knew that there was gonna be a prince, because that's what the blurb says, right? And typically these books, especially if you compare it to Fourth Wing, you know, you already have some preconceived notions on what the pattern will be for the romance, right? There's gonna be the prince, which is this hero, this golden boy, very likable, but not quite the person that you kind of cheer for. And then there is the broody, dark hair anti-hero. That's the usual pattern. He's typically a villain. He has a hate to love, enemies to lovers, forbidden love relationship with the female main character. And I love this dynamic. I love it. Although I'm not a huge fan of love triangles, I do like this dynamic, and especially if there's like a clear winner, like, yes, we are all rooting for this guy. But in this story, I mean, the way it started, she already was with someone, right? She was with Lee. They had been together for 1 year. And when I met him in chapter 1, I believe, I was already like, I like this guy. And by chapter 4, I was thinking, this is the perfect man. Like, he was attentive, caring, supportive. He was never belittling her. Okay, he called her kitten, but I thought it was a cutesy name because she's called the alley cat and he was calling her kitten in a lovable way. I was not put off by it. I know some people were. I was not. I thought he was the perfect man. He was so supportive. He was never telling her, like limiting her and telling her, oh, you shouldn't be doing this is too dangerous. Like some of the dynamics that we've seen between the hero and the female main character in these other books. Let's take Fourth Wing as a reference, since this book is compared to it. Dane in Fourth Wing, he is a bit limiting and he is a bit controlling in terms of what Violet can and cannot do, should and should not do. And that's something that eventually makes you pissed off at this character and makes you dislike him and not root for him, even though he's the hero or the honorable guy, whatever. These traits make him unlikable, I think, as a reader. In this case, though, in this book, Lee was perfect. And that's usually the definition of the hero, yes. The hero is usually quite the perfect guy, right? Like the representation of the perfect guy. Very honorable, very, But the thing about Lee is that he had something else also. He had this roughness, this edge, and this spice. And we saw that already by chapter 4. By chapter 4, these authors had already managed to make me fall in love with Lee. I was thinking to myself, this is an important character. This cannot be some random castle messenger. I don't buy it because there's a lot of emphasis on his persona. They have introduced him too much. So either they are building him up to be like this perfect guy so that they get rid of him early in the book, and then it creates some additional trauma that fuels the female main character, or there's more to him. And especially when the female main character kept constantly referring to his crystal clear blue eyes and his handsome face, I was thinking to myself, why do you put so much emphasis on this? There has to be a reason why we are putting so much attention into this character. And why is the prince in the blurb not really referred to with a name? So yes, this was one of the obvious things. By chapter 4, I was thinking Lee has to be the prince. I am 1000% sure, because he has a father that's mean in the castle. He conveniently works in the castle. He has this beautiful blonde hair with blue eyes and blah, blah, blah. And one thing that I dislike about these special editions is that sometimes they contain spoilers, such as, for instance, showing Meryn with silver hair, because at the beginning of the book, she was described as a dark-haired girl, and she has a silver hair here, and she has silver hair here, and she has silver hair in this illustration also. So something happens with the hair. So even though that was not a spoiler, that still bugged me a little bit. Like, I would have preferred to discover that myself as I read the story. But what I'm getting to is that these beautiful illustrations that they usually include in these special editions contain spoilers of scenes that happen in the book. And who are we depicting as the handsome prince? It's a blondish guy that is extremely handsome with crystal clear blue eyes. I mean, so yeah, it was obvious by that point that Lee couldn't be as perfect, because he was perfect. I'm sorry, he was perfect. So he had to have some fault and he had to betray her somehow. So this was the perfect betrayal. And especially after that heartfelt goodbye by the end of chapter 4, go to the front line and then come back to me. And I was Meryn. I was reading this book as Meryn She and I were one. I was in first person POV reading this book, and I fell in love with Lee the same way that she did. And the fact that they had already built a relationship during a year, like at first when I read that, I thought like, we've missed so much. But in those 4 chapters, I felt like we already got to know him. And I felt like he was so genuine and so caring and so honest and so like the perfect guy. The perfect guy. So by then I thought, okay, so now Meryn will go to these bonding trials. She has said bye-bye to Lee, the love of her life. She's now going to the bonding trials. She will be bonding with a wolf, even though that's not the intention. That will derail her from her plan, etc., etc. Eventually, she will meet Lee in the castle, and that will be a surprise, and the revelation that he's the prince will happen, probably in a public way, so that the kind of like betrayal, the sense of betrayal is even heightened when it happens in front of everyone, and she cannot have this explosion of anger. And that's exactly what happened. And I thought, this is the perfect excuse. This creates the perfect arc, this betrayal, so that she can switch from the first element in the love triangle, which would be Lee, aka Killian, and Stark. This is a common pattern and something that I could wrap my head around, because otherwise, how do you leave or forget this genuinely perfect guy that's also edgy somehow? I just couldn't see that happening. So I thought, this betrayal is the perfect plot twist to make her switch sides, so to speak, or to forget about him. And now that she is with the bonded, she might spend more time with Stark, blah, blah, blah. That was my expectation going into this book, and what was confirmed by, I think this was around chapter 15 or so. However, he gives her a note, meets her in the gardens, and honestly, I feel like in this book, I related to Meryn so much, because it often happens that I don't understand some of the behavior from the main characters, from the female main characters. And although there were parts that I did not agree with, for instance, her dynamic with Anassa, we will talk about this as well in a moment. But regarding the romance, I was like, I would have acted exactly like Meryn acted throughout the book. She and I were the same. So she goes to meet Killian, and Killian explains himself. And I usually love the betrayal arc, and I typically like to make the character that has committed the betrayal suffer a little bit. But in this case, when Killian explained himself, again, he's so good with words. Everything he said felt completely logical and genuine. And Meryn forgave him. And I thought I wouldn't. I thought I would be more pissed off, but I forgave him too. And the dynamic they started to build from there, it grew slowly. She had this grief attached to this person or this version of him, this castle messenger that she thought he knew for a year. But the lie was not, even though it was a lie, and it was a big lie, but the way that he presented it and his reasoning and his pure honesty and genuineness when expressing his reasons and his genuine care for her, it just made you want to forgive him and move on from there. And the character had this sense of longing for him. He was her safe space. And I felt that too throughout the story. And I have to say, I have read in these reviews as well that everyone is talking about Stark, not so much about Killian, surprisingly. I have to say, I read this physical copy at the same time as I listened to the duet audiobook, duet narration. Amazing. If you have never heard of a duet narration, it means that while the book is narrated in first person POV, so there's not like different chapter POVs in this book, the dialogues are narrated by a male voice actor and a female voice actor, depending on the character that is speaking, which it's something that I really enjoy, because I do not like when the female narrator reads all the voices. It just looks very strange when you're trying to represent this, let's say, Stark, this broody alpha male, and making this voice like this and pretending to speak like him. It just comes out weird. And both narrators were incredible through the audiobook, but the reason why I picked this narration simultaneously as I was reading this book is because the male narrator is the same narrator as Shaden. And I have to tell you that one of the reasons I think that a lot of people haven't connected as much as I have, as much as Meryn has, with Killian is because they haven't listened to the narrator, because he was so good at creating different voices for the different male characters in the story, but especially for Stark and Killian, that were so different, but they fit them and their characters so well, and they were, both of them, super good. They were smooth, they were very attractive, but especially the emotions, how this narrator conveyed the emotions of these characters. He was making Killian feel so genuine, like so caring. I cannot replicate it, but you have to listen to this. But he was like, Meryn, no, I will protect you. I will protect Sayla. Please, Meryn, Kieran, whatever. Like, he was like so soft-spoken and so, don't take me for a reference. Give it a try. I think that's what added to me falling more in love with this character. Perhaps if I would have only read the dialogues from Killian from here, I would have a different experience. I don't think so, because as I said, I didn't feel any cracks in his facade. I felt like he was completely genuine and caring and supportive throughout the book, and he still have this spice to him, this a sense of naughtiness and edge, and yeah, I just liked him. It was a well-rounded MMC, in my opinion, a very strong contender. So he cares for her, attends her wounds without expecting anything in return. He's patient, he's caring, and by the time that he finds the Naver, the first Naver, and they go into the interrogation room, and then they kind of officially reconciled, I was like, so we are not halfway through the book, but we are a good 200 pages or something like this into the book, and we are still with the first love interest, and he's still perfect. How am I switching to Stark? Like, I was trying to think from Meryn's perspective, like, how can you change from loving someone because they love each other? How could you switch to the other character? I just couldn't see it possible, honestly, at that point. But I knew that it had to come, right? So I kept reading and reading and reading. And by the third, fourth, fifth intimate scene that they shared in this book, 400 pages into the book, I was like, okay, maybe I got this book completely wrong, because I thought this was gonna be, as I said, the typical love triangle, but it seems like Stark is more of a background thought, even though I enjoyed, and we will talk about Stark in a moment, even though I enjoyed every time Stark was in this book, I loved his character, but he felt more of an afterthought, a secondary character that was kind of trying to come into the forefront, but he was still overshadowed by Killian in Meryn's story. So honestly, I was like, I think this book main romantic arc, the main story is actually Meryn and Killian. I don't think there's gonna be a Stark coming. I think it's brewing in the background, and there's a purpose for that, there's a reason, and that will probably build up either by the very end of the book or the next book. But I think we are getting a love triangle. This is actually the love story of Meryn and Killian. And by that point, I got extremely anxious and I had to leave the book. Like, I was around page 400 and I had to leave the book to the side and just forget about it for 2 to 3 days, because I had this sense that something horrible was going to happen, and I didn't know which of the options that I was contemplating was worse. Because I thought, okay, for her, after this beautiful love story that we have been presented, for her to switch, something big at this point has to happen. It cannot be a betrayal like the one at the beginning of the book. It has to be either Killian dies, which would be completely devastating and would make me cry, or worse, he betrays her, but like big time. There's something fishy going on with the castle, with the king, with the royal family. There's something fishy there. But I still wanted to cling to the hope that he was a good man, because he was perfect. There were no cracks in his facade throughout the book up until that point. The only suspicious thing, of course, I thought that he could be in cahoots with his father secretly and lying to her, but he just felt so genuine every time they interacted, every time they shared intimate moments together. He seemed like genuinely caring, but the time that I was like, okay, this is not looking good, was when after they interrogated the Navers and Meryn goes to the Easter Quarter and she meets with Igor, and he tells her that the Navers attacks haven't stopped but increased. And Meryn is thinking, oh, how weird. After we catch that Naver and interrogated him, and Killian promised to take care of the Naver, and now the attacks have increased. So yeah, I know I was being delusional at that point. I think I knew that the betrayal was going to happen, and that is the main reason why I left that book sitting on my table for 2 to 3 days, because I needed to mentally prepare for this, because I saw it coming and I knew that it would hurt me. And then the betrayal came. And I mean, it was probably the only way for this love story to switch, because there's no way this was gonna be a cheating storyline, and it would make Meryn and Stark's relationship start in such a strange way that for me it would put me off. So the only sensible way that this could go was most likely betrayal, even though I still hoped for his death. I'm sorry, but I thought that it would be best for him to die a good man, a good lovable man, rather than to put this horrible cloud into this beautiful story that has been going on for 1 year and 4 months at that point. It would just mess with your head so badly, and that's what happened. And that's why I'm so hurt, and that's why by the end of the book, that betrayal hurt. Because as I said, I love betrayal in this type of books. I like when the betrayal is already brewing before the characters meet, and it's motivated usually by revenge or rivalry of some kind, by being at opposite sides of a conflict, due to family rivalries. Whatever it is, it's something that originates beforehand. Then when the characters meet, they usually meet as rivals, enemies. Their story starts developing from there. And somehow, somewhere along the way, they realize that they have a lot more in common than they thought. And they realize that they might not be so different, and feelings start to surface. And then the betrayal happens. It's inevitable, it's painful. Sometimes it's caused by the female main character, sometimes by the male main character. But the common thing they all have is that it's usually followed by pain, regret, guilt, because at that point they already love or have strong feelings towards the person they have betrayed. And that leads to a redemption arc. However it happens, however long it takes, it's usually a beautiful story. I love those. So why did this betrayal hurt so deeply? Because this betrayal was deliberate, intentional from the beginning, and there was no change of heart as their story progressed, as their relationship progressed and their intimacy built. There was no guilt or regret after the betrayal happened. And in fact, there was even a sense of accomplishment from his side. He had tricked her and he was happy about it. And to know that he was lying to her, even though he did claim that he loved her in the end, even after the betrayal, that he actually loved her. But the fact that he felt so genuine the whole time, the fact that I couldn't see cracks in his facade, it just messes with your mind, because you start questioning the same way that Meryn did. What's wrong with my head? Is there something, what's real and what's not? Was any of it real, Killian? And that was so painful to witness. How this perfect man was just an illusion. This perfect man that she had known and loved for a year and a half, pretty much. And he felt no remorse. And to top it all, he then became a siphon, which also hurt me, to be honest, because I felt like, why did you do this to yourself? Why would you want to become this just for power? I guess this is as great of a motivation as any, especially in this context. But still, why did you were already perfect? Why did you do that to yourself? And not only that, but he had to also turn Sayla into a siphon too at the end of the book, which made me question, really, was anything real? Because you can tell me you love me, I'm Meryn, I'm speaking on her behalf, but if you care so deeply about Sayla, if you ever did care about Sayla or Meryn's family, which of course he didn't, because he also got rid of the mother, so why would you do that? He just destroyed, he shattered the illusion he had created throughout a whole book where he was the main love interest, where he was the perfect love interest. I felt it all. So I was just so destroyed by the end of it. And now I have to sit here and think that in the next book, I'm gonna have to witness him become a monster. I'm gonna have to witness him go down. I'm gonna have to witness him stoop even lower. I'm gonna have to reconcile the story of the perfect man that I met, that I spent time with for almost 600 pages, with the monster that he has become. That's why I said that his story would have been nicer for me if he simply would have sacrificed himself somehow for Meryn, and even though I would have cried and it would have been devastating, at least I wouldn't have this gnawing feeling in my chest when I think of Killian. I'm scared for book 2. Okay, now let's talk about Stark, because we've talked a lot about Killian. Yes, I needed to get this out of my system because it still hurts me. It will take a while for this feeling to go, but Stark deserves also attention, because yes, that's typically the type of character that I gravitate towards. I like this anti-hero villain type of characters, and he is quite stereotypical. He's very broody, he's also very rough, doesn't sugarcoat things, looks like he's not really helping but complicated things for the main character, although behind the scenes, he's actually doing everything for her. For instance, I knew that when Meryn switched rooms or was given a private room or that dress, I knew that that had to come from Stark, because the obvious answer was Lee, or Killian, sorry. But he never confirmed it. These were just assumptions from Meryn. So I was thinking, there has to be something. And I love the character of Stark from the beginning. Every time he appeared on a scene, I was just enjoying myself, reading about him, reading what he was saying, how he was acting. He is very Shaden-like in his demeanor, his appearance, the way he talks, and I really enjoy it. But as I said, I couldn't fully focus on this guy, even though I also felt the same way Meryn felt in this book. Like, I could see that she was interested in him, that she felt this connection, this attraction towards him by the way he spoke and acted in certain occasions. And oh my God, the scenes with the ink were amazing. Every scene with the ink. So I was sold on him. I'm not saying that I prefer Killian over Stark in general as characters. I'm just saying that in this particular story, the way that it was narrated, I just felt that the story between Meryn and Killian was so beautifully built that it would just felt like a betrayal for me to just be swayed by Stark. So now that the betrayal has happened and we know all the truth and we know that Stark was there from the beginning looking after her and we have this understanding of what was the truth of it all, now I can allow myself to dive more into this relationship and I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see this relationship evolve in book 2, and I do think it's gonna be a slow burn. I think it's gonna grow. It's already been brewing here a little bit, and I think it's gonna fully blossom in book 2. But again, it's gonna pain me to see Killian transform into the monster that he has become, and especially because he has said to Meryn that they will see each other again because after all, she is to become his wife, meaning that we can probably expect him to appear in book 2 still gaslighting Meryn and telling her that he loves her. And perhaps there's truth in a twisted way in that statement. But at this point, I don't think that even a redemption arc is possible for him. The only way I could see him redeeming himself is through sacrifice and through righting the wrongs. But anyway, I'm looking forward to see how Stark and Meryn's relationship develops. And I have to say, one of my favorite quotes from this book has been one that Stark said once Meryn discovered that she was the rightful queen of Nocturna, which is, "Make me your instrument of vengeance. Let my hands act out every savage, depraved thought. Use me. I'm yours." Of course, when narrated by Gabriel Michael, this sounds a lot better, but this quote, I was like, this is a moment. And before we move on, I have to say that the one thing that has soothed the sting in my heart just a little bit has been the bonus chapter narrated by Stark. It doesn't appear in this edition, but it did appear on the audiobook. So I got to listen to the moment in which Stark met Meryn at the beginning of this book on that street fight. And once you know the story and you get to listen to him and to Kratos, his wolf, experience things and experience how he sees Meryn for the first time after 3 years and why he does the things he does. It was just a perfect way to end this book in a good note after the complete devastation that I experienced. Like, it's the only thing that kind of soothed me and prepared me for the next book and made me want to take the next book with a bit more excitement than pain. And also, in this book, there is a bonus chapter with Anassa's point of view, and it's also beautiful. It helped me also understand Anassa a lot more, although you get a sense again after everything has been revealed, but it gives you insights into her childhood as well and how she felt the day that she bonded Meryn and why she acted the way she did towards Meryn. It's a beautiful bonus chapter as well. I don't know if it's available online. Hopefully it is. But if you can find it, read it. If I find it, I'll list it below, but I'm not sure. Okay, so since we talked about Meryn and Anassa just now, the only thing that I will say is just I love their bond. I like how it's evolving, but I just want a lot more from them, from both of them, because I feel like I don't know Anassa yet. And when I read the bonus chapter, it was just one chapter. It was like 8 pages, and I got so much from it. I got such great insights that I just want her story to be expanded and her personality to show off more. And throughout this book, I just felt like I was being constantly frustrated because of the miscommunication that they had. and there were reasons to it. As I said, this bonus chapter really helped me understand Anassa better. But also there was just so much unnecessary miscommunication between the two of them. And when they seemed to be getting to a better place in their relationship, one of them had to shut the other out, and then they would fix it, and then they would shut each other out again. And I just constantly felt like, oh, this again. Now we're gonna have a few chapters where they don't speak to each other, they don't cooperate. So I did get a little bit frustrated with their relationship. And also, while we talk about some things being predictable, obviously the silver hair had to mean that she was someone important, that Meryn was someone important, and that it was connected to this particular dire wolf, and that Anassa had chosen her for a very specific reason. So that was obvious, but it was still a beautiful story when you discover the truth. And the last thing I'm gonna say about the story is that I also enjoyed the pack dynamics, except that annoying guy, I don't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about, that Daemos guy. But I really enjoyed also the relationship that she formed with her friends, with the twins, with Tomlinson and the other members of her pack. And I'm looking forward to see these relationships build up more. Although, if it has resemblance to Fourth Wing, I am suspected that we might suffer on that front too. I might suspect that a few of these people won't be with us much longer, especially in this brutal context of the war that they are thrown into. And now with a new royal in the crown, I think that we are gonna lose people in here. I think that we are gonna suffer. I think one of the twins might be cut from the story, because that would hurt, so that will happen. Maybe someone like Tomlinson. Let's see. And now let's look at the blurb for book 2 together, because this book will be released May 5th, if I recall correctly, of 2026. And I am recording this video March 23rd, 2026. So there are no spoilers out there. Everything here is new for everyone, except the few lucky ones that have received an advance copy. So let's look at it. Crowned by destiny, consumed by vengeance. Against all odds, Meryn Cooper has inherited the crown and a deadly war. As the kingdom of Nocturna splinters under the weight of generations of lies, it is up to Meryn, her bonded direwolf Anassa, and their allies to bring the country back from the brink. But the commoners, the bonded, and the nobles are distrustful of their new queen, and Meryn is caught in a deadly game of politics. Meanwhile, Meryn's beloved sister, Sayla, is more at risk than ever. Confusingly, the one person Meryn can trust is Stark Therion, the dark, dangerous alpha she thought hated her as much as she loathed him. Yet his loyalty is unshakable, his presence intoxicating, and with his guidance, Meryn can seize an unthinkable level of power. With enemies closing in and shadows stirring her dreams, Meryn stands to lose her kingdom and her heart. Blood will spill, bonds will break, fate will be tested. So reading about this, we know that we are thrown into this book with a Killian that has fleeted but will eventually come to claim Meryn as a bride, with Meryn not only being the alpha of the Strategos pack, but also the rightful heir to the crown. At the end of the book, she shared all the knowledge and information with the pack through the bond, so they are all aware. So it will be interesting to see, as this blurb said, how the commoners, the bonded, and the nobility will deal with this news, if they will accept her. What kind of challenges will she face? Let's see what happens with the sister. I'm not sure if she will become a sacrifice at the end or if they will find a cure for her, but that's gonna be a pretty tough point in this story. And regarding Stark, as I said, I think that their relationship will grow from here. I think there was already an underlying tension between them, especially what we saw on one of the last inking scenes. And then when he bowed to her, I think he's still gonna be his broody, demanding, challenging self. I don't think that even now, as Meryn has been revealed to be the queen and he has acknowledge that. I don't think that he will sugarcoat things for her. I hope not. And I hope that he keeps being his challenging self, because as he said, he doesn't want someone who's weak on the throne, and he sees her potential. So I hope that the relationship continues developing that way, and that there's still a bit of bickering and a bit of that enemies to lovers dynamic that they have, so that there's still of a slow burn in book number 2, and we're not just thrown into the love story from the beginning. That is my hope. And actually, I do have the feeling that there might be an element of fate, of star-crossed lovers, of fated mates, same as their dire wolves. I do think that there's potential that there's something there, because they had this inexplicable connection that Meryn reacted to even when she was in love with Killian. And yes, that could be because of their dire wolves mating connection, but I do think that there might be something else. I'm not sure, because before Meryn was bonded to Anassa, so they didn't have a connection through this mating bond. In Stark's POV bonus chapter, when he saw Meryn for the first time after 3 years, he felt this instant, sudden emotion when he saw her. So I do feel like there might be something also between them that goes beyond the bond. So let's see, I would like that. And let's see also how this bracelet and these shadows and the powers that Meryn has now inherited through her bloodline, let's see how that all plays out into the story. I'm very curious about this. I'm not sure when I'm gonna read book number 2, because as I said, it comes out in May, but I think I'm gonna get the same edition as I have from FairyLoot for book 2. However, getting that edition means that I'm gonna have to wait for the physical copy till October, November. So I'm thinking that if I really feel like reading this when it's released, I might do it just with the audiobook, because I'm not gonna get another physical copy, and I'm not gonna pay like 20 euros for a Kindle book, because that's how much they cost when popular releases are out. So I just think I'm gonna get the audiobook version with these awesome narrators, Gabriel Michaels and Avery Carris. That's probably how it's going to be. So stay tuned for the review of book number 2. And before we end the video, I'm gonna be showing you this special edition from FairyLoot. As you can see here, the dust jacket has very nice silver details and also a few glossy elements. However, I'm gonna show you in a moment how this edition looks a few days after I recorded it, because I am not happy with the quality of the finish. And in the back, there is a quote that reads, "Only the worthy survive the bonding trials." This edition also has a sprayed edge, which shows Meryn and Anassa, and it's sprayed on 3 sides. If we remove the dust jacket, underneath there is a very beautiful hardback, which also has foiling details in gold. And the front of the hardcover shows the infamous sword that the king used to control the direwolves. The dust jacket is also reversible, and essentially it has an alternate version of the traditional cover. It is typically red, and this one has a purple pinkish hue. And the quote in the back of the alternate cover is my favorite quote from the book. "Let my hands act out your every savage depraved thought. Use me, I'm yours." This edition also has beautiful end paper artwork. The first one features Prince Killian and Meryn, and the other end paper artwork depicts Stark and Meryn with their direwolves. And here you can see a video that I recorded just a couple of days after I filmed my review. I noticed that the silver foiling on the dust jacket started to fade in certain places. I only spotted like a little scratch in the front, although it bothered me anyway, but this is the part that pains me if we look at the back. The silver foiling has started to fade noticeably in a lot of the letters, and I haven't really been moving this book around. I haven't really been using it much, so this wear only comes from me holding it and taking it out of the shelf, honestly. So I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest. So I think I'm not gonna buy, sadly, because I really wanted it, but I don't think I am gonna purchase Fury Bound with FairyLoot, because if it's going to fade like this, I'm just gonna stick to the audiobook. This pains me, this annoys me. Perhaps I will eventually paint this over with silver ink or silver paint. Let's see. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.